Hello YouTube! I'm Amel Alicorn here to discuss the topic of alicorns. Not something as specific as Twilicorn, but the whole alicorn thing in general and how it relates throughout the show. I will basically try to stick to three main topics: their lifespans, their power, and their role in society. I might, however, bring up any topics I see fit to discuss later on. I haven't seen many people actually try and do an in-depth analysis on this. Why is that? There is so little evidence to back stuff up. Most of the reviewers I've talked to don't even want to touch it. In order to make this review, I will need to dig up every last bit of information I can find, and then take a step back to look at how it fits into MLP as a whole. I will be dividing this review into three sections: canon, which is stuff that we know for a fact; inference, which will be information that I can reasonably assume based on how it relates to everything else in the show; and theory, things that I can reasonably see happening but can't thoroughly support. Canon. Let's start off by stating the facts, so I apologize if this gets a bit dull at first. Lifespans are something tricky about alicorns. Even though MLP has stated that Celestia and Luna are thousands of years old, their exact age is never stated. We have seen alicorns change in their physical appearance over time, for example in the castle murals. We see Celestia having a pink mane instead of her current one with the additional blue and green, and Luna changed very drastically between Seasons 1 and Season 2. Cadence also went from a teenager to a fully grown alicorn in only a few years before the current place in the timeline. It's also been stated by the MLP staff that Twilight will not outlive her friends. I will discuss this later in the inference area. Power levels. How powerful is the average alicorn? We know that Celestia and Luna are strong enough to move celestial bodies through the sky. However, Celestia was defeated by Chrysalis, meaning that they are certainly not all-powerful beings. What about Twilight and Cadence? Well, Twilight was good at magic before she became an alicorn, but she is certainly not on the same level as Celestia and Luna. We have no current evidence to suggest that being an alicorn automatically makes Twilight super strong, but we don't really have any evidence against it either. Cadence, unlike Twilight, we actually have a fair bit of information about. There was a sizable book published recently that had a short part in it that explained exactly how Cadence became an alicorn. She used her natural ability to bring out love in people to stop an evil mayor from taking all of the love from a village. This book shows that Cadence had a great power to manipulate love before she became an alicorn, but we have seen her powers grow a fair amount since then. This could be due to Cadence becoming an alicorn, or she could have simply practiced since then. The book in reference doesn't say anything about when all of this happened, so I can't relate it to their lifespans at all. Now, how do alicorns fit into society? We know about the four main princesses and how they rule Equestria, but what's to say that if Cadence can come out of nowhere and be an alicorn, there aren't other alicorns out there? An animation error comes to mind from the Candelot wedding that showed 3 alicorn guards in the background. Was it really just a glitch though? Derpy's eyes were originally just a glitch, and now they are full-blown canon. What's to say that alicorns aren't fairly common in other cities, and just don't have any purpose in Earth Pony towns like Ponyville? Inference. We now find ourselves back to the subject of alicorn lifespans. I would like to take a chance to look at the mythos of the series. MLP has a very Greek atmosphere to it. Creatures such as manticores, hydras, and Cerberuses all make cameos, which are all creatures from Greek mythology. Cities such as Cloudsdale also take up architecture characteristics of Greeks and the Romans, adding to the mythos of MLP. Now, if we apply this to other things, we get some interesting ideas. Candelot is atop a mountain. Does this remind any pony else of Mount Olympus? If we apply this even further to this being the location where the alicorns rule, we get support for the Greek pantheon theory. For those of you who don't know, this is the theory that all the alicorns make up the equivalent of the Greek gods, where the gods are immortal but they still have limitations. This would put Celestia somewhere in the role of Zeus, Luna in either the role of Poseidon or Hades, and Cadence in the position of Aphrodite. The whole situation has got a few holes and positions, but that's to be expected considering there are only 4 alicorns. Twilight is not yet really explained enough to make a guess at what she will be. The MLP staff said that Twilight will not outlive her friends, and I mentioned this earlier. How can that be, though? Alicorns may or may not be immortal, but we know for certain they have long lifespans. I can see 3 options arising from this. 1. Twilight will not permanently be an alicorn. This is the least likely of options, as it would make the entire ending of Season 3 narratively pointless and probably just upset a lot of the fandom. Number 2. The rest of the main 6 will become Alicorns. Let's hope not. That would be one of the most cheesiest, show-ruining things ever if handled improperly. Enough said. Number 3. Twilight is not a full-scale Alicorn. If I am going back to the Greek train of thought, this would make her a demigod, like Hercules or Perseus. This might also apply to Cadence, as it presents an easy way that she could have looked like a teenager only a few years before the current time, yet be a mature Alicorn now. Alicorns maturing is a topic I will bring up later again. Then again, the whole statement about Twilight not outliving her friends might have just been to stop all the cruel images of Twilight crying over the graves of her friends. I mean, this is a kids' show, and the staff really hasn't been that truthful about all the stuff they said. They are under contract. Onward back to the subject of the power of Alicorns. I don't really have much to infer about this. If I could say one thing about the topic, it would be that Celestia is much more powerful than Luna. While Luna moves the moon, Celestia moves the sun, which is of much greater mass. This is relative to our universe, however. What is much more likely is that the sun and the moon are of equal mass. This would also mean that the celestial bodies would rotate around the Earth, which is what most Greek astronomers believed. If I were to give some deduction on the roles of the Alicorns in society, the ruling ones of course, it would be that they are viewed like saints. The show consistently substitutes the word God in with their names. In common expression, it doesn't imply much more than importance, as I consistently hear atheists say, "Oh my God." It's more or less just common phrase, however all phrases have their roots. Theory. Now on to all the crap that I can't support, but think would make sense based on what I've discussed. Remember when I talked about Alicorns changing in appearance? Well, I think it would make sense that Alicorns don't age by time, but by having the physical appearance altered every time they go through an event that has a major impact on their lives. Celestia's mane changed after she banished her sister to the moon. Luna had her big change shortly after being brought back from her nightmare moon state, and Cadence also appeared to have matured sometime around when she fell in love with Shining Armor. This theory would go against the third option for Twilight now outliving her friends. However, I still think that the staff's comments might have just been to discourage all of the dark fanfiction coming out on how Twilight was watching her friends die. I have very little theory about the power level of Alicorns. If I had to say something, it would go along with the Greek pantheon theory, with the power levels rising as their seat in the pantheon rises. I think me previously stating that Alicorns were like priests, however, needs more information. I talked about the phrases the characters use replacing the word God. For example, Rarity says, "As Celestia is my witness," in one of the episodes. Even when you don't mean it with a religious connotation, it applies significance on the fact that she's swearing on Celestia, and I think relating her to a priest represents this well. I also previously mentioned stuff about the possibility of more Alicorns in Equestria. I find it interesting how no pony knew who Princess Miyamura Cadenze is if she's one of only 3 Alicorns at the time. You think if there were only 3, people would recognize them all. What if there are more though, ones that run things in the background? It would start to make sense. And who's not to say that there are Alicorns with normal jobs out there in other parts of Equestria? The only cities we ever get a good view of are Ponyville and Canterlot. If Alicorns were in Canterlot, they would most likely be in the castle or in the guard, and Ponyville is just a small town that might not be interesting to an Alicorn. Well, that's all I can think about at Alicorns for the moment. If you think I missed anything, feel free to leave a comment. I realize this video will be rather pointless after Season 4 starts, as Alicorns will probably be one of the first things they explain since one of the main characters is an Alicorn now. So, if you're watching this in a year, hopefully I did well. Anyways, subscribe to my channel so you'll know when I put out more stuff. I should have a lot of time over the summer to get cracking on it.